spell do to the mind and the body? My favourite person on planet Earth is with us, former NASA astronaut and commander of Expedition 10, Leroy Chow. Good to see you, Leroy. Well, tell us, a year in space, what does that do to the body?
Yeah, the more time you spend in space, the more things happen to you. There are a lot of biomedical effects of space flight, especially long duration space flight, and none of them are good. And so you're not only exposed to higher levels of radiation, which could have implications years on, you're also in the microgravity environment. Things change. You've noticed vision changes in over 70% of long duration flyers that we didn't see back in the shuttle program when we were only flying for a few weeks. And so we've seen other concerning things happen with some people with the way their blood flows in the aorta, and so when you're flying in space for 6 months, certain things happen, and then the few people that have gone longer have said as you go longer, even more things happen. Some people develop some kind of skin irritations. It's just hard to say. We don't have enough data to really say what happens, but suffice to say, I'm sure he's ready to come home.
I'm just interested there, that moment when you get out of the spacecraft, Leroy, and gravity takes hold. What is that like? And how many months does it take you to be, in any sense, normal?
Actually, even after a short shuttle mission of maybe 1 or 2 weeks, your body's already kind of adapted to the space environment. So even from that short of a flight, when you get up out of the spacecraft, you feel extremely heavy. I remember feeling subjectively about 5 times heavier than I expected. I was extremely dizzy because my brain had forgotten what to do with the signals coming from my balance system. And I felt just not very good. I felt kind of almost like I had a flu. I couldn't think clearly and, just felt not great. After a 6-month flight, I can tell you it's the same kind of symptoms, but they're a little more severe and they last longer. In the case of a short mission, after a couple of days, you feel pretty good. After the long mission, it typically takes 2 to 3 weeks before people feel like they're kind of back to normal. But, it is an adaptation going up and coming down. But we're remarkably adaptable creatures, and so it's not that bad.
Yeah, I know what would happen in my household if I said, look, I'm just leaving for 6 months and I'll be back at the turn of the year, and then you don't show up until the last week in September, and all the family duties he's missed. In fact, he was asked about this, if he'd been told at the beginning of training whether he would have stayed for a year, he would have said no. If you'd have been told 6 months through, can you just stay for another 6 months, what would that have been like?
Right. So psychologically, that is something that, you kind of set in your mind before you go. You're training for years. You got your mind set. It's going to be 6 months. Now, in my particular case, just a few months before launch, the Russians came forward with a proposal. They wanted us to fly for a year. Here we were training for 3.5 years, thinking we're going for 6, and now they want us to stay for a year. And the reason was, at the time, they were trying to sell our seats back to a Russian tourist.
Yeah.
Now, in our case,
there's plenty of tourists around. Leroy, we're out of time. Plenty of tourists who would buy that seat these days as well. Leroy Chow, thank you very much. We'll be right back.